G'day and welcome to the Grow a Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Troy Truen. Each week, we speak with an owner who has grown a business with 5 to 30 team members to something bigger. Diving into their numbers and unearthing the pain they've experienced, we explore what they did to overcome each barrier and what they would do differently from day one. Let's get into it. Welcome, everyone. Today I'm interviewing Maria Halaz from Stride Equity. She's based in Sydney, Australia. Thanks for your time today, Maria.
Troy, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with how we know each other. So Sam from the PR Hub, who actually was on the podcast herself about her business, which went live a few weeks ago, put us in touch, thought you'd be a great guest for us.
Yes, we've been working with Sam for some years, so I've known her and her journey as well. It's very impressive.
Yeah, she is. Great team as well. Tell our audience a bit about your business, what it does and how it makes money.
So perhaps I can tell you a few words about my background that puts my business into context. So I started out in corporate in biotechnology, and I was in a biotechnology company for some years. Then I went into investment banking and then venture capital, but mostly focused on technology commercialization and funding. And in 2007, I was recruited to run a company that was already listed at the time, but we basically had to rebuild it from the start. It essentially was a shell. So we acquired ultimately 3 asset portfolios and grew the company from 3 people to 90 in 3 different countries and launched a product all throughout in what you would call FMCG area, but it was at the premium end. And I left the job last March, and in September I joined my current partners who I used to work with at Investec in early 2000s. So we've known each other for about 20 years, and we set up a venture group. We have a registered crowdfunding platform, and we also have a venture fund. So what we do is we basically fund early stage companies at the stage where probably they're ready to scale a little bit or grow their business generally. And we fund them through a crowdfunding platform, but we put ourselves up to 20% equity into their business.
Right. So that's a slightly different model to, well, the leader in Australia is Birchal. Equitize is another one here as well. So I haven't heard of them entering that space of co-investing as well, but that's a great differentiator and obviously gives confidence to the crowd if you're putting your own money in as well.
Oh, absolutely. And, this is a natural thing for us. Stride, actually, my current company, has been around since 2016. And my partners, John Brett and Ellen Chonowitz, they were very senior directors at Investec and very used to investing for the last 30 years. So it's a natural thing for us to look at companies and not just put them on a platform, if you like. I mean, crowdfunding generally is just a platform. It's an intermediary business, but we would like to turn that a little bit around and make sure that if we put a company on the platform, we want to have confidence in them and demonstrate that with our own money, if you like.
Yep.
And also put them through a bit of due diligence. So it's a different process perhaps than what you would go through with Birchal or Equitize Crowd.
Yeah. So Stride started in 2016 and you came on board September 22.
That's right. So Stride originally was really a private investment firm. So my partners invested in companies like Airtasker, Vocus, you may have heard about them. And they've grown these businesses with the founders, from almost nothing to billion-dollar businesses. So, they've got a reasonable experience in building businesses. Likewise, I grew a business from literally nothing or turned it around from nothing to a company that was operating in 3 countries. So, we've got a little bit of experience in growing businesses. So we thought we'll use that to not just invest in the companies, but also provide them with mentoring, contacts, connections, the right advice at the right time.
Yep. So, and when did Stride add the crowdfunding element or platform to the offering?
The crowdfunding platform was registered in late 2021, but we only launched the business in March this year. So So our very first offering is going on the platform in about 3 weeks.
Right. Great. Fantastic. Looking forward to it. Well, that'll be, you'll be live by the time this episode goes live in July. So the audience can check it out. So that's how you started out. So how old were you when you joined the business last year?
How old was I?
Yeah.
I'm going to reserve the answer.
You're the only second person that's refused to answer that question. It's just to give the audience context, really, of because some people jump out of corporate at mid-20s.
So really, I've got about 30 years experience. So I'm obviously in my 50s, and I've got a few kilometers and a few mileage behind me, in different sectors and different industries. So, that might give you the right context to the audience.
That's great. And do you have some key numbers you can share to illustrate the growth of the business over the last, now 7 years?
Within Stride, you mean?
Yeah.
So the Stride business is a private business. So we won't be able to really share the numbers there. But obviously, when you look at it, if I give you a couple of examples, like Airtasker or Vocus. Vocus, for example, started out with a few $1 million valuation, ended up being sold privately for $5 billion.
Wow. What's that? Sorry, I haven't heard of that. What's it called and what do they do?
Vocus is a communications company. So it's a platform company, work with all the large communications companies like Telstra and Optus, infrastructure provider.
Right. Wow. Okay. That's great. And what about number of team members? Back in 2016, they started with full-time equivalent at Stride. And how many are you at now?
So Stride has always been an investment company, and it started with the two founders in 2016. And today we have 5 people, including myself. We also have our chief operating officer, and we've got a head of compliance and legal. And just as a curiosity, she also was working with us at Investec 20 years ago. So 4 of the 5 people are old colleagues.
Well, that's great. Well, it's good. You work with who you know, who you trust.
Exactly. And that's really important in business, I think.
Yeah. When was the moment you felt like you had succeeded?
Well, I think success is like happiness, Troy. It's temporary, and it's a state of mind.
Yep.
And, there are moments of success for sure. Some of the successful moments for me were, in my previous company where we secured distribution in Neiman Marcus in the US, all across their stores. And we were one of only 5 hair care brands at the time. So I felt pretty impressed with myself. So then, also successful was when we raised $10 million to actually do the rollout of the product in a very tough environment, 2018, small company. So that was a great feeling. But also I think it's quite a feeling of success also comes to you around team. And we had a couple of dicey situations, one conflict within our team members, and we were able to actually resolve it internally. And we negotiated through with each member. So at the end, we ended up with 2 really motivated, positive people coming out of a very dicey situation. It could have ended up with lawsuits. So that was also a bit of a feeling of success. So what I'm trying to say is that success is something that I think comes and goes in terms of how you feel. If you look at companies that you consider successful companies, very, very few of them stand a test of time for a very long period of time. And in businesses, it always comes with things that are up and down.
Yeah.
I think most successful people feel slightly worried about calling themselves successful, because as soon as you do, some things go away.
Yeah. Yep. Curse, karma. I think 80% of people answer that question as I haven't got to the point of succeeding yet. So, but the next question, what does success look like to you?
I think in a business, if you've got a profitable business, happy people employed, happy customers, and you might even make a good, difference in the world. I think that's kind of the ideal way to be in business. I'd be considering myself very successful if I built the next business to that level.
Yep. Number one thing you'd recommend to marketing a fast-growing business?
Well, clean up communication. I think a lot of us are so close to our products or service. We all think that we've got the best thing in the world, and and some of us do. But to communicate that very clearly, simply to the market, especially now when there's so much noise and you have to compete with so many other brands and things, and it's so expensive to acquire customers. A very clear, precise communication to the market is very important.
Yeah, I think it's very common for small business owners because we love our business, we love our products and services, so we just vomit, text into a document or onto the website, confuse the audience that's reading it, and we will obviously also talk too much about ourselves instead of talking about the prospect, the person. Have you read Donald Miller's book, Building a Story Brand?
Oh, I heard about it. I haven't read it, no.
Yeah, it's really good. He's got a framework of 7 pillars that you need to go through to clarify your messaging. And we went through it late last year, and it's made a huge, positive change on our, bounce rates come right down on the website. Conversions are up as well as time site. And just reading it sounds so obvious, but then you turn around and look at your website and you're not doing what you just read and heard you should be doing, which makes a huge difference.
Very, very easy to slip up. Very easy to slip up because we're so close to our businesses and we think that, everybody understands what we're doing, but actually, generally they don't. And they don't care unless it delivers something for them.
Yeah. And how did you fund the business, Stride, or how was Stride funded?
Look, Stride is funded very much like most of the startups. We fund it ourselves. So our original funding in last year, we put all our money in to launch the crowdfunding platform and the venture fund as well. So we are the cornerstone investors in the venture fund, and we will be making it available to the public later on this year. In terms of the Stride Equity, the management firm, we actually have some private investors who also put money in. So we've gone through the first round of seed investment into the actual fund, the fund management business, sorry.
Yep.
And the fund will be available on the crowdfunding platforms, on the crowdfunding platform later on this year.
As in, people will, through a crowdfund, will be able to invest in Stride Equity themselves?
So people in a platform will be able to invest in Stride Lead, and Stride Lead is a venture fund that co-invests with the equity fund.
Oh, awesome. If you were to start up today with plenty of funding, would you go into your industry?
Absolutely. I've just done that. Although I wouldn't call it having plenty of money. Clearly, I'm going in there because I would like to make more. But, I definitely invested my own money. And also at my stage of my career, if you consider, it's also a opportunity cost, because the opportunities that are out there, with experience similar to mine are significant. So instead of that, I've invested my money and I'm also investing my time into this business. So I think there's significant investment and costs.
You're very experienced, obviously, in the investment space. What's your take at the moment on, not just in Australia, but around the world in raising money? There's a lot of tech companies that have gone under and cutting staff because cash is drying up from investors. But I just read the other day, I think a few startups here in Australia raised $100 million, just 2 of them, within a week recently. Do you feel it's quite challenging at the moment because of, inflation and interest rates going up, so investors are a bit wary?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, in the venture industry, but also on the listed markets, when you consider in Australia, UK and the US, the IPO market is completely closed. I think their IPOs are few and far between. So there's no exit for venture funds. So any of the companies that they lined up to exit from and have extra money to invest in, downstream is now sitting there, and they have to make those $100 million style investments because they need to feed their existing investee companies. So that's one thing. The other thing is because of the failures, and by the way, failures are just the rule in venture capital. So, we shouldn't be surprised that companies fail. They will continue to fail, and they failed in the past. But because of those, and because there have been some free money deployed into companies that perhaps shouldn't have been receiving money, I think a lot of the funds are sitting on their hands right now, waiting for that to clean up and valuations to settle down before they start deploying capital again.
Can you outline the most stressful point in your small business growth journey so our audience can learn from it?
Oh, where do I start?
It's always hard to pick one.
Yeah, it's very hard to pick one. I think in my life, there are two things that have been like a repetitive stress factor. And one is capital raising. And I think I'm not different from most of the small business in that. And the other, and maybe I'll tell you a few words about that because there's some learnings in that, is COVID. And we were a listed company during COVID, and we were one of the first companies that had access to all sorts of COVID testing. Because we were listed, the ASX regulated what we can and can't say. And the ASX view was at the time, at the beginning, that any diagnostic testing is of no use. So companies, even though we were a biotechnology company, we really knew what we were doing. But companies who had testing basically couldn't release any information. So we were put into suspension by the ASX. Mm. So we had all this testing. We had all these negotiations with governments and mining companies and, healthcare providers to provide them the testing, but we couldn't move. So we were in this checkmate situation and suspended on the market for 3 months. It was the most stressful period. And particularly because they took that view, quite unjustifiably as well. As it turned out, 18 months later, we all knew that we couldn't have come out of lockdown if it wasn't for the testing. So the lesson that I learned, and it was a really big lesson, that I know we would like to be first movers on the market, but sometimes it's not a good thing to be first movers. But if you want to be first movers, you better get ready to jackhammer, because you have to break down some walls.
Yeah, pioneers end up with the arrows in their back. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tough thing to be first mover. So be prepared.
Yeah. What area in business do you feel you've had to work on the most to add the greatest value?
What area of the business had I worked most that added the greatest value? This is a really good question. I think the greatest value is your people in business. Yep. And businesses don't exist without people. And you need to invest in your people. And it's not just money, it's time, and also your thoughts and your growth. You need to invest your own growth into your people.
Yep, totally agree. What have you enjoyed the least about managing fast growth?
Oh, God. Logistics. We turned into from a research-based company into manufacturing, distribution. Oh, God, it's painful. Manufacturing in 4 different locations in 3 countries. I could fall asleep on those charts that show where the product comes from and each component. So didn't enjoy that at all.
What do you love most about growing a small business?
The little things, when a customer calls up and says, "Oh, you changed my life. I used to do this, but now I do that." And it's just kind of fantastic. I just love that.
What has been the biggest mindset shift for you in your small business growth journey?
Give up perfectionism. I think, and I'm still learning that. Every now and again, I still return to it. And then I notice myself and I say, "No, Maria, that's okay. It's good enough as it goes, And I think very often in small business, we just need to have the minimum viable product and go with it. We can't afford to sit around.
Yeah, I'm a reformed perfectionist, and I love that saying, don't let perfect be the enemy of good.
Exactly. I agree 100%.
The number one habit you think a small business owner needs to develop and maintain?
I think a check-in. And that is check in with what you do, check in with your family, check in with your people, check in on your business. And don't be afraid of pivoting. And that's pivoting how you deal with your people, how you deal with your customers, how you deal with your business. And I think, checking in and pivoting change is really critical in small business.
Find it hard to define a clear strategy, then communicate it and execute it alongside the rest of your team? Or you currently don't work a simple quarterly strategic plan to boost your team's performance? Our Business Growth Formula online course is perfect for small business owners with 5 to 30 team members wanting to grow. We share the mindsets, habits and tools to be a legendary leader in your business. growasmallbusiness.com.
Can you talk to how you've added people to the team, some wins, mistakes and advice for those listening?
Well, if you can, don't build a sales team. So
they're difficult creatures, aren't they? They're hard to find, good ones, salespeople. I think it's probably the hardest role to recruit and retain.
Absolutely. And, I built multiple sales teams, but unfortunately it was for the same company, because every 2 years you could almost see a complete changeover of the guard. Very, very difficult. Very difficult. I still haven't figured it out. So my advice is, if you can avoid having to build a sales team, please do so.
Yeah. Any other advice on general recruiting and hiring, though, for the audience? You've clearly very experienced, getting up to 90 people in the last business.
I think culture. I always say attitude is more important than aptitude. You can train people for most things. You can't train honesty, integrity, and culture in and out of them. So.
Well, that's the next question. What are some of the things you recommend to building a sustainable and kick-ass culture to help with the growth?
Well, I think, it's very trendy to have, Zoom wine afternoons and coffee meetings and all that stuff. I think fundamentally, none of that works if you don't treat people with respect and if you're not open in your communication. I think people are really well informed. They're not stupid. You need to tell them what's going on. And, tap into the resources that you've got. Very often, in an unexpected corner in your company, someone comes up with a good idea.
And tell our audience how you've handled balance.
I haven't handled balance very well for most of my professional career. I think I'm probably not the best person to ask, but I think it's important. And I think one of the really critical things that I've been doing is just looking after my health. Because, once you look after your health and you're physically there, then you can look after your family and everything else. I've been very fortunate. My family has been amazing and been tolerant of my not being around, traveling 4 months out of 12, all those things. But you need to look after your health and, of course, your relationships, because when you come up from the bunker, you don't want to see a nuclear explosion. You really want to see some nice green fields that you can join.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. How much professional development have you invested in yourself?
Oh, look, it's ongoing, constant, and all aspects. I mean, right now, because we invest in all sorts of businesses. So, from technology to manufacturing to food tech, recruitment. So getting educated in all those areas is very important, and getting up to speed, on some of the things that have moved on big time. I mean, technology moved on significantly. So I think, I probably spend maybe 20% of my time reading, learning.
That's great. That's really good. Yeah, I'm about 5 hours a week on professional development, reading, listening to audiobooks mainly and podcasts. It's great. Have you had mentors or coaches along the way?
Yes, I'm a big believer in counseling, and so mentors, firstly, when we talk about mentors, I really would not be here if it wasn't for the mentors that I met along the way. So mentors are really important, but I think even more important are sponsors, people who actually go out and make that contact and put you in touch or stand up for you, because those are the people that really will push you forward. So seek out both. Advice is great, but someone who's actually prepared to stand up for you or in front of you or push you forward is even better. In terms of in terms of mentors, I think that's kind of my insight. In terms of advice generally, as I said, I really love counseling. So periodically I return to my various therapists of different sorts. Some of them taught me how to meditate. Others just gave me insights about life. The third one is assisting me with, living longer and healthier. So I think you need to take in as much as possible from others.
Now, I assume you've got a board of directors because you've got a lot of other people's money. How big is the board and how often do they meet?
So our board is 3 only. We used to have a board of 5. Obviously, when I was a listed company, we had a bigger board. Now we've got a board of 3 and we've got an investment committee of 4 people, but we tap into advisors regularly. Like we've got a panel of advisors, about 20 that we can tap into regularly on different industries.
All right, Maria, we're on to our final 5 questions. What do you think is the hardest thing in growing a small business?
Wow, there's so many things that are hard about growing a small business. I think if you've got, let's go back and say, you've got the right solution to the right problem and you kind of know how to deliver it, the next thing is solving your money problem. I think funding is very difficult and it will continue to be difficult for growing a business. And there are some real valleys of death along the way and almost, every step. So I think funding is a very, very challenging part and will remain so.
Favorite business book which has helped you the most?
I read so many business books, but the one that I read most recently, and I can recommend because it's got like a different perspective on different things, is a book called How to Invest. And a guy called David Rubenstein himself is a very, very successful private equity investor, interviewed 20 plus highly successful, experienced investors in different sectors. Larry Fink and Ray Dalio to even charitable funds investment managers, where obviously the objectives are different and the strategies are different, but they're thinking. And just going through and understanding how people think about investing is very, very important for me personally. But I learned a lot. A great deal.
I assume for someone thinking of raising money, that would also be a good book for them to read as well, for getting the other side of the table's perspective.
Absolutely, because they're investment managers. They're from listed funds, from private equity, from venture capital, all sorts of funds that might be interested in looking at your business. And
you mentioned Ray Dalio. I assume you've read his great book called Principles.
Yes.
Yeah. I love that.
A little while ago.
Yeah, it's great. He's got a very soothing voice. So I recommend if anyone's going to listen to it, and it is a long book, I think it's 10 hours long, listen to the audiobook version.
I think I listened to the audiobook too. I didn't read it.
He's got a great, I don't know what part of New York he's from. I think he's from New York, but yeah, great accent, very, very gentle. Any great podcasts or online learning tools you use for your own professional development?
Look, my podcasts are my fun thing. So I listen to things like longevity, like Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman. Those are real scientists or physicians who have some real insights into looking after yourself so that you'll have that marginal last 2 or 3 decades, healthy and enjoyable and fully functional. So those are the podcasts that I'm listening to. Otherwise, I just tend to read a lot. I love reading, and of course, listening to audiobooks. I've got a whole list of them that I'm queuing up there.
One tool you'd recommend to help grow a small business?
I started time boxing about 2 or 3 years ago with my last couple of years in my last business, and I found that invaluable. So people say don't do to-do lists, but I actually do a to-do list and then I use that as a basis for time boxing. And every time I don't do something because I get distracted, I immediately have to allocate that. Unless I allocate that to an alternative time, I cannot abandon. And that will allow you to then focus and not be distracted. Obviously, in my previous job, I had people coming in and out of my office all the time. So it was really easy to be distracted. But if I just close my office for an hour and everybody knew that not to come in, then I knew that 1 hour is for critical thinking and or something that I have to really focus on. So time boxing, underpinned by a nice to-do list, to me, it's a good tool.
So for the audience, time boxing, by that you mean locking yourself away specifically for an hour or 2 without distractions, people interrupting you, so you can go deep on work?
Yeah, so basically you do a to-do list a day and you want to achieve maybe, I had like a to-do list of 35 things. and you might want to achieve 4 or 5 definitely, and then you put those on that day. But even the other 35, you plan your week, and you open your calendar, your Outlook calendar, and you say, for example, I need to write an article about this topic. I put that in on Thursday at 10 o'clock. And I'm not going to book a meeting on Thursday at 10 o'clock because at that time I need to write that article. So time boxing is really to allocate a certain amount of time for each task at the beginning of your week, so that you've got a plan of how you're going to get through your 35 or 40 or 70 million lists.
Yeah. Otherwise getting distracted with the smaller stuff.
Exactly. And then try to be disciplined. I mean, sometimes it's really hard to do that. But again, my strategy or my technique is to, as soon as I get interrupted and it's important and urgent, then I have to allocate the task to another time box.
Yep. Finally, my favorite question. What would you tell yourself on day one of starting out?
Just do it.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for your time today, Maria. I really enjoyed our chat. And congratulations on your career and the growth. We're looking forward to checking in on Stride in a few years. Really exciting that the crowdfunding component or the platform of the business is launching mid-2023 this year, and great growth in 2016, helping fund businesses and their growth throughout Australia. Thank you.
Troy, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to talk to you.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Please leave a review in iTunes or whatever platform you listen to us on. It means more small business owners will find our cast and help people with their business growth journey.